recording this 5:15 on the 3rd of May. Recording this got Nolan. Nolan's always back. But today we got a special guest, man. Contributor for the Strickland, contributor for the Knicks Film School. Jeremy, say what's up to the people.
What's going on, guys? How's everyone? How are you two?
I'm good. I'm good. We were just talking about the NFL draft. My Giants, they had a good draft.
Yeah.
Nolan, the how you felt about the Pittsburgh Pirates? I mean, not the Pittsburgh Pirates, the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Don't bring up the Pirates, man.
How you felt about their draft real quick before we get into the NBA topics? Yo, Nolan.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
The Steelers draft.
Yeah. Real quick before we jump into the Knicks topic.
I like the draft. I like Najee Harris. Like I said, didn't really like taking a tight end second when our offensive line's pretty bad. But outside of that,
Yeah,
can't really complain. Like I said, I think the Giants did a really good job, though. I don't know if you guys are, or Jeremy, I don't know if you're a Giants or Jets fan.
Yeah,
I'm a Giants fan, so I'm also happy about the draft. I thought Gilman did a great job, surprisingly enough, but I was glad to see it.
Hey, man. How do you feel about Daniel Jones? Because real quick, I felt like, Daniel Jones is going to have a lot of opportunities with the weapons, but you know how it is, like quarterbacks, they either fail or they either do tremendously well in their development. How you feel Daniel Jones is going to be?
It's tough to say. I mean, last year it felt like he was getting held back quite a bit. Obviously, Jason Garrett is not the best offensive coordinator around, so curious to see how things work schematically. But he's got the weapons, and he was great with the deep ball. So, I mean, hopefully Saquon's healthy, and that gives another option in the backfield. But I'm confident. I feel like it's crazy to give up on guys after 2 years, but this will be make or break for him. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, sounds great, man. Sounds great. Wanted to talk about the recent Knicks play. The Knicks recently went on a 9-game winning streak. Lost a game to the Suns, came right back in Houston and blew them out. How has been your energy towards the win streak, the vibe of the team? Like, how has been your energy, Jeremy?
Oh, it's been off the charts. I mean, I haven't been able to cheer about the. I mean, I've been rooting for the Knicks, but it's nice to see the Knicks and not have to have any thought in your mind of like, oh, if the Knicks win a game late in the season, is that going to conflict with the tank? How's development going? It's just really great to see a team like the Knicks winning, especially because I'm a fan of them. So life's a lot better when the Knicks are doing well.
Yeah, man. Like me and Nolan, we were talking for the past couple of weeks, and we were saying on how we've been very impressed with Randall's play. Randall putting up 30 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, shooting 46% from 3 on 7 attempts during this 11-game streak where we've been rolling as a team. Nolan, how you felt about Randall's play during this stretch?
I mean, this stretch of Randall's ball has just been, besides being like the most surprising stretch of basketball I've ever seen from an NBA player, it's just been incredible. I mean, he's playing like a top 15 player in the league right now. And I'm not sure if he can be the best player on a championship team, but I think he's definitely going to be a continual all-star for the next years moving forward and something to build around.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I haven't remember a player in NBA history who has made this kind of leap. Like he has came from like a starter, pretty much putting up 20 and 10 on consistent losing teams to being an actual contributor to winning. I also wanted to talk about the importance of the upcoming road trip. We have the Grizzlies, Nuggets, Suns, and then we go down to LA for a road trip with the Clippers and the Lakers. Right now we have a 1.5 game lead ahead of I believe the Hawks. So we have a little bit of a cushion, but I prefer not the Knicks to really slow down during this period of time because every game is critical at this point. How do you know how you feel?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I think tonight's game is going to be so important against Memphis. And I know Memphis has been struggling their past week, the past like 4 or 5 games. And I think they won 1 out of their last 4. But the next few wins are going to be pretty tough to come by. And I think that if we can at least win, not go, even if we can go 500 over this stretch, I'd be fairly happy with that.
Yeah, for sure. Jeremy, how you feel? How you feel your confidence level coming in with this upcoming road trip, the current road trip?
It's a good measuring stick. These are some great teams Knicks are facing. They started off with the easiest opponent in Houston, being the worst team in the league, and Memphis is a little bit better than them. So eager to see what that's like, especially if Noel's not playing. I know Grizzlies are great with their rebounding, especially offensively. So that'll be an interesting matchup to watch. But Knicks are certainly catching a break considering how Dennis Schroeder is out for the next 10 to 14 days due to health and safety protocol. And who knows what LeBron's health is. He's going to be out tonight against the Nuggets. He's missing the Clippers game a couple days from now. So he may be out a month or a week from today. Who knows? But I think just considering how Denver is also so good and the Knicks haven't won there in, I want to say like 15 years, it'd be nice just to go. I mean, 3-3 on this road trip, I think would be really impressive. You hope for more, of course, but just being a 500 team, last leg of the season, that's I'll take it.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
I think it's crazy that even like I know, like I said, that I think today's game's important, that Memphis hasn't been doing as well. But I know that Valanciunas is, if Noel's not playing, I think he's gonna have a pretty big game. So I don't know. How do you think that the Knicks are gonna go about defending Valanciunas? Do you think it's gonna be, if Noel doesn't play, do you think it'll be a lot of Taj and Pell, or do you think that the Knicks will go with more of a small ball lineup and maybe see some Obi, or not Obi, Randall at the 5?
I think they'll probably try to stay a little bit bigger, just based on the fact of those rebounds. I mean, yeah, Valanciunas, I think he'll eat regardless. If Mitch were there, it might be a different story, just based on how good he is with box outs and securing defensive rebounds. But yeah, I mean, he's a tough matchup to face. I think probably the Knicks just figure, if he cleans up, he cleans up. But let's try to get the ball away from Ja. Ja is great attacking downhill, not so much in terms of outside shooting. So maybe the Knicks try to force him to his to his weaker side and have him shoot more. That could be another option. But the last game the Knicks played against the Grizzlies, it was not particularly close, and then the Knicks found a way to cut it down towards the end and made it go to overtime and won. So, and I think that might have even started the winning streak, if I recall correctly.
Yep.
That sounds about right. Yeah, yeah.
So, clearly they know what works in terms of coming back, but as long as they're not, there's some slower quarters or Knicks might get up ahead, but they won't kind of step on the gas and just make sure they're at a distance like we saw last night in the first half. Hopefully that's a little bit different. They're able to keep a bigger lead and kind of just safely secure the game from there.
Yeah, I feel like Valanciunas might be have a big game because he's one of the best bruisers in the league, and the way we are with Taj, I don't know how many minutes Tibbs plan on playing Taj tonight, and Pell, he hasn't had much NBA experience as it is. If Randall, it depends because I feel like if Randall plays the 5, it may potentially take away from his effectiveness on the field scoring wise. So it'll be interesting to see what Tibbs does for sure. I wanted to talk about D Rose and how important he has been during the stretch and how important he should be during this current road trip. During this 11-game stretch, Derrick Rose been scoring 16 points, four rebounds, 3 assists, shooting 41% from 3. So giving us an outside shot, even if it's only 2 attempts, he's still giving us a threat from outside, which we have not been getting from Peyton at all. And it's been a blessing to see, Peyton's minutes come down and Rose is coming up, and the winning has you see the winning from that, which is pretty cool. Yeah, pretty much. As far as Berman's article pretty much lit a fire on Knicks Twitter and the Dame rumors. Me and Nolan, we were texting back and forth about like the rumors, and I said that if I'm Portland, there's no way in hell I'm giving you guys either CJ or Dame without having RJ back in return. How do you feel about that, guys?
And I mean, you go ahead, Nolan.
But basically, about your point specifically about RJ, I would just say that would be him and Randall would be the only two players really off limits, whether you had to throw in Obi and Mitch and a few first rounders, like 3 first rounders. I'd be fine with something like that. But I just don't know if Randall and Dame are a good enough duo to win you a championship.
Yeah, for sure. How you feel about that, Jeremy?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think the two of them accomplishes very much. I think also the other factor why the Knicks would keep RJ is if you found a way to get Dame onto your team, you've got a nice window for when Dame's still in his prime. He's going to be 31 this summer. So you get it for, age 31, 32, 33 seasons where you would hope he, assuming he stays healthy, is playing like a top 10, maybe top 15 player in the league. But if you trade away RJ, then you're just going all in on a 4-year window, maybe. And that's not something that's wise to me. And I think the Knicks recognize that too. I think RJ is absolutely a mainstay. And the nice thing about the Knicks is, having 7 draft picks in the next 7 first-round picks in the next 5 years, plenty of seconds, even a good one this year. Right now, I think the Pistons pick would be 32nd or so. You got Obi, as you said, Mitch as well. You'd probably give up IQ. I mean, I think there is more than enough to part with where you could get the job done without putting RJ on the table. Because to me, the only players I'm probably trading RJ for, and this isn't even going to happen, so it's kind of like, well, whatever. It's like, your Lucas of the world, your Zions, but it's not going to happen. So when you consider that, RJ is, I guess, as untouchable as he can be. Yeah, I mean, if you found someone who, like, that's the other thing. I think Dame's a great player, but I also don't think he'll ask out this year, but crazier things have happened. If he doesn't ask out this year, but asks out next year, you got a great free agent class. You've got Steph Curry, who knows what he's going to do. Chris Paul, if he wants to resign in Phoenix. Bradley Beal, if he's still going to be loyal in Washington. And you got Zach LaVine, who potentially may leave Chicago if they keep trending in this direction. So when you consider all those 4 players, it's like, well, if the opportunity for Dame, arises this summer, it's a different story. But if it waits another year, like, that benefits you quite a bit, because I would rather sign one of the 4 guys. I mean, probably 3. Zach LaVine's not my favorite of the 4, but any of those guys over trading for LaVine for Lillard, would make a lot more sense.
I agree. And another reason why I wouldn't trade RJ in this package is because if you compare him to other Duke wings, such as Tatum and Ingram, Tatum his second year put up 15, 5, and 2, shooting 37% from 3 on 3 attempts, 45% from the field on 13 attempts. And if you look at Ingram's second year, he put up 16, 5, and 3, shooting 39% from 3, only shooting once. 47% from the field, shooting 12 attempts. And those 2 years that LA and Boston had, they weren't really contributing to winning like the way RJ has. And RJ put up 17, 5, 3, 5, and 3, 39% from the 3, which he has increased on 4 attempts, and shooting 44% from the field. And if you I know all development is not the same, but if you look at that trajectory, I'm right there with you guys. Like, I'm not really willing to give away with the ammunition that we have, so moving on from the Knicks, I actually wanted to talk pick your brain about other NBA teams, Jeremy, if you don't mind. I want to talk about Portland. Portland is 5-5 in their last 10 games. How do you feel about, before we get into anything, how do you feel about Portland and how they've been playing this season, Nolan?
So far, I mean, they've actually surprisingly been playing worse with their players healthy, which has been kind of crazy to see after making that trade.
Yeah.
I think they've won a few in a row now. I know that you said they're 5-5 out of the last 10, but I'm pretty sure they won at least 3 in a row now. So I mean, things can still turn around. I'm really not the biggest fan of Nurkic, and I'm really not a huge fan of really. I think Robert Covington's a little overrated. So I don't know. I mean, I see that there's enough talent there when healthy and clicking on all cylinders to be a consistent, really good playoff team, but I don't see them as the upper echelon of teams in the Western Conference right now.
Jeremy, how you felt about their play this season?
It's definitely been lackluster. I think Portland had a window, and I think it closed for the most part. To me, they're a team that has an elite player. CJ's fantastic, but I don't know how they can coexist together when you look at the front court. I agree, Nolan. I'm also not a Nurkic fan. I think the fact that they have yet to win a postseason series with him is kind of a strong indictment, and
Oh,
the
really?
fact
I
that he's
didn't
been
realize that.
yeah, and the fact that he's been injured before, that's not exactly good for him moving forward.
Yeah,
Covington, I agree. Yeah, he's been injured in the past, and his shot's not falling. And defensively, he's kind of losing a step there. And they traded for Powell, which makes sense, but they're kind of beholden to keeping Powell because he's a free agent at the end of the year. He's got a player option, but he'll probably opt out because he can make a lot more money.
Yeah.
And Portland can either say like, "Hey, we'll overpay you to stay," or he could just walk for nothing, and then they have no way to replace him because they're an over the cap team, and they would have lost Gary Trent Jr. for basically nothing. So, yeah, I'm just not Portland's biggest fan in terms of how they've been building their roster, and I just kind of see it as a ticking time bomb for them, unfortunately.
What did you think about that trade for Gary Trent Jr. or trading him away?
yeah,
I it feels short sighted in a lot of ways. I understand why they did it for sure, but I mean, I like Trent. I I think he could have made things work. I also would have been curious if they wanted to build around Trent moving forward, but then moved McCollum in a deal. But the market for front court players is pretty tough right now. For back court players, it could be easier, maybe. But I don't think there are going to be too many big buyers and sellers this summer based on how contracts are lining up and whatnot. So things always change. But yeah, I didn't. It felt like a panic move in a lot of ways to get Powell.
yeah, for sure. And you and Macri were talking about how they messed up like many summers. The Allen Crabbe situation. Just like the people they surrounded with Dame and CJ this year, right? Like Melo's not gonna stop anybody. Nurkic, we all know how Nurkic is around the rim. Canner, professional turnstile. Simons, he's too small to be backing up Dame and CJ to see a defensive difference. Uh, the coaching, a lot of people have been saying the coaching is something that needs to be looked at. Maybe he has lost the locker room. I don't know. Like, I feel like Dame has had a sense of loyalty to him because last year they had a mediocre season too. And Dame had his back. Dame had his back and said, no, this is our fault. And I don't know if it's going to be the same situation this year, but it's tough. It's tough to see. Another player who has on the Portland who has been just injury riddled is Zach Collins out of Gonzaga. Came out, gave him a few good moments in the playoffs here and there in the regular season, but just hasn't found a way to stay on the court. At the time, he was a shocking lottery pick. People thought he was going to go mid first round. Portland went up and took him. He's another player like who hasn't been key, hasn't missed a lot of games for them. How you guys felt about the Zach Collins situation? Nolan, you could start.
Um, Honestly, I'm just not really a huge Zach Collins fan in general. The fact that he hasn't been able to stay healthy is just even less reason for me to like him and to have faith in him, I guess, developing moving forward. That being said, I mean, there's been players in the NBA that have had a few rough years of injuries, and Nick Gallinari's having a pretty solid year with staying surprisingly healthy ever since last year in OKC. So, I mean, players like that can turn it around, but I just don't know if how much he's worth investing in at this point.
Yeah, for sure. Jeremy, how you felt about the Zach Collins debacle over there in Portland?
Same way. I don't know how much there is in terms of redeeming him. He's got talent, and I think theoretically, he makes a lot of sense. He defends well at the rim and he can shoot. I think a lot of people always kind of love that type of like stretch big who can really provide for you, but
Mhm.
he just hasn't shown up because he's been so unhealthy. So it's a contract year for him. It would have been great for him to be able to show he can still make a dent in some way to a team, prove his worth. But he'll be lucky if he gets, I think, a minimum salary next year. I mean, I would imagine some team will try to take a chance on him, but he just hasn't been healthy. So it's kind of just the way it goes. Availability is the best ability.
Yep, just about to say that. That's exactly right. Exactly right. Switching gears real quick. Wanted to talk about Houston and Kevin Porter Jr. Recently he dropped a surprising 50 bomb. I saw that game, pretty impressive. 16 points for the season. He's averaging 16 points, 6 assists, 3 rebounds, shooting terribly from the field, not as efficient as a shooter as you want him to be, only shooting 30% from three, 40% from the field goal range. But definitely a talented young player. Definitely has some talent that, if developed right, can be an impact player. Coming out of college, always a trouble kid. I remember reading a story about him, like how he's from the Seattle area and how people always had to look after him. He was always into the streets. Even our guy Jamal Crawford had looked after him, made sure he went to school and got a scholarship. Then he's one of those guys who went to multiple high schools, had to move. When he finally got to Southern California, did he even play the whole season because he had issues? He finally gets to the league and have an okay freshman year. He comes back his sophomore year from that whole jail incident he had in the summer prior. He comes back and the Harden trade happens and Cleveland acquires Taurean Prince. They give, Kevin Porter Taurean Prince's locker, and that whole, fight happens. They ship him off to Houston. During that time, I really wanted the Knicks to trade for him. I really thought he could have made an impact. Uh, Before, Alec Burks had his whole breakout, we were still needing that perimeter player who could, score. Uh, how'd you guys felt when the Knicks didn't trade for Kevin Porter Jr.? Nolan, you can go ahead and start.
Um, I wasn't. I mean, I think Kevin Porter Jr. is a player with a lot of potential, and he'll eventually find a role in the league. Maybe even be a mainstay in Houston. But I think he's lacking in a lot of other areas of his game, and I don't know if he's talented enough to maintain. Like, I don't think he's going to be averaging 25 plus a game or anything like that. I think he's a streak shooter a little bit. But I mean, like you said, like if the Knicks would have made a move for him for like a second round pick or pretty much something of no consequence, I'd have been all for like them bringing him in, as long as they didn't have any questions about his like effect on the locker room and team chemistry like that.
Jeremy, how you felt?
He's definitely talented, 100%. Um, I think that a lot of people kind of gloss over what the effect someone can bring in terms of your culture. Like if you're working with someone, whether it's at a job or school, whatever it may be, and you have someone you don't like working with, or you think that they're just not maybe emotionally 100% there, mentally all there, it's tough. It's really hard to do. And I think that a lot of people kind of just view it from a 2K perspective of like, oh, we'll just add talent and it'll be fine. And so my thought process for the Knicks was basically like, he's talented. I'd love to add him, but he also needs to get a lot of his stuff together. And that's why for me, it'd be like, if they'd done it, it would have been awesome because you're bringing in talent, you have picks, you can afford to take on that challenge. We hear about the culture and how great it's been in New York, and winning certainly helps that. So that's one way of looking at it. And yet at the same time, I don't blame the Knicks whatsoever for not taking a chance on someone who needed a second chance, maybe not in this type of environment. We know what it can be like to rebuild in New York. We know what it's like when you can see someone have incidents in New York. I mean, I remember over a decade ago with Plaxico, for example, when he shoots himself in the leg, and Obviously, it was a problem in terms of I'm convinced that Giants would have won a second Super Bowl
Yep.
that year, but that's not that's
He's
conversation for another
great,
day.
man. He's
Point
great.
being, it's just I get why they didn't do it, and I'm at peace with it because I think as talented as he is, he needed to find the right environment. I hope for his sake it's Houston, but the talent is definitely there. The potential is there.
Yeah, for sure. And talking about like Houston's future, they signed Christian Wood, which is a great addition. The Harden trade, which is a weird thing because they could have gotten Ben Simmons, the rumors, right? They could have gotten Ben Simmons, but also like they passed on Karis LeVert. Well, I know, like, he's a former net, but Karis LeVert is extremely talented, and I feel like next year he'll show his worth in Indiana because of that horrible injury. But like, how do you guys feel like how they handled the Harding trade? Do you think they got the best assets for them, or they could have went another route? Confusing. How do you feel about that, Nolan?
Um, I think they could have done better, but I don't think Harden really did them many favors in that regard either by, all the ways he wasn't showing up to practice and was getting all these pictures taken in the media, that they kind of just had to make the best deal available. And I think he made it pretty clear that he wanted to go to the Nets. And like what you brought up about Ben Simmons, I think that came down more that Philly wasn't willing to part with Ben Simmons yet, more than Houston not wanting Ben Simmons. I don't know. Like, I haven't really read any reporting on that to like verify that. It's more of a gut feeling. But I think that the outside of that trade and like all the picks they got, that's great. The player Oladipo, they got virtually nothing for, but for an overall outlook of Houston, I really like a lot of their younger players, like you said, like Christian Wood, like Kevin Porter Jr. if he can get his head on straight. So I mean, I think they're in about as good of a spot as you could be in given the circumstances they were dealt.
Jeremy, how you feel?
I feel like the Nets deal was it basically gave them an excuse to tank. Like that is kind of what they traded Harden for because the picks that they're getting really aren't that great. I mean, they could be in a few years, maybe 4 or 5 years from now. That's where they could kind of certainly see the benefits of this trade. But again, it's like, yeah, the idea of if the Nets, or excuse me, if the Sixers and the Rockets, if Tillman Fertitta was a little uncomfortable with that deal or wanted to stick it to Morey or whatever, but I, it was I think it was a fine enough trade. I guess when they control the Nets' future, so that's one thing. But I'm curious what they will do with Christian Wood because he is a talented player and he could fit somewhere. I think they could get a nice haul for him.
Mm.
He's still 25? He'll be 26 next year, so there's certainly value in that. And he's not earning a ton of money, so if I'm the Knicks, I'm probably not super interested, especially if I can keep Mitch. But in terms of what Houston's doing, yeah, assuming they can even keep their pick this year, it's protected. I think 1 to 3.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if it's 4 or less, the Thunder get it. So
Mhm.
um, I mean, I guess their future in a lot of ways hinges on the lottery, and we'll see how that shapes up for them. But man, I'm just glad to not see my team rebuilding. So best of luck to Houston moving forward.
Isn't it a refreshing feeling when you see other teams going through this and we're laughing, we're like, man, thank God we don't ever have to go through that. Well, maybe let me not say that, but for this season,
Yeah,
we're
maybe.
good. All right. One last segment before we let you go, Jeremy. I wanted to talk about the Nuggets, man, because the Nuggets surprised me. Last few days they've been playing well, and recently they beat the Clippers. I seen that game. What an amazing game that was! A certified hood classic. Without Jamal Murray, they're 12-4. How you guys felt about the Nuggets after Jamal Murray's injury? Nolan, you can go ahead.
I think the Nuggets, I mean, they've been playing surprisingly well with what's his name going out. What's their guard's name? Slipping. Jamal.
Jamal
For
Murray.
Murray?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I think like the way they've played, I think they're what 9-1 since he's gone out, 8-1 the last nine, maybe something like that.
Yeah, they're
But
9-1, 12-4.
yeah, and I mean, I think a big part of that is the trade they made for Eric Gordon. It's helped them to kind of be able to maintain their level of play. But um, I just, I just really want to see. I mean, I still don't think now with that injury they have enough to make a serious run in the playoffs. But at the same time, I don't think there's any team in the West that would want to play them. For that matter, I don't think there's any team in the West that wants to play any other team in the West at this point. I mean, from 1 to 10, there's all solid teams. So I mean, you can have some luck in terms of seeding, but with the way the Lakers are going right now, with LeBron being hurt, the way they could end up even as low as like in the seventh and being a playing game, it I just don't think they have enough to get out of the West this year anymore. When I think Jokic has proven that he's been the MVP. I was probably leaning towards Joel Embiid before this injury and before Jokic really got to show what he could do without Murray, but I just don't see them being in the top tier anymore, at least as long as Murray's out.
Jeremy, how you feel about the Nuggets this year? Before and after Jamal?
So I actually disagree. I think the Nuggets still have a pretty good chance.
Mm,
They
okay.
were counted out last year. I certainly counted them out, and they did a great job of taking down the Clippers. And for a
Mhm.
little bit, they made that Lakers series entertaining. So Jokic is just that good, and they're firing on all cylinders. I mean, the Aaron Gordon trade was fantastic for them. Michael Porter Jr. has been phenomenal in terms of what they're doing. Will Barton, it's been a shame he's been out. So they're a little bit thin, but they've also been a deep team. I'm a big Monte Morris fan dating back to college. I think his ability to just take care of the ball is so pivotal. So based on the fact that Jokic is MVP, it wouldn't surprise me if he just kind of goes super scion and just lifts the Nuggets as far as they can go. And it depends again on where they're seated, but Utah's good. I'm curious how good they'll be if Mitchell's not 100%. The Suns are a great team, but they are also, except for Chris Paul, not very battle tested in terms of the playoffs. So I don't know. I could see the Nuggets making a run. They're well coached, they're talented, and they're just fun to watch. So Jamal Murray, I think certainly him not being there will hurt, especially considering the performance that he had in the first round of last year against Utah. But it's like they're great at home, and they can cause some chaos on the road. So why not?
Yeah, I agree. I feel like Mike Malone doesn't get enough credit. The way he's used Michael Porter Jr. He's Michael Porter Jr. has been handling the ball a little bit more off pick and roll, handoffs. You just utilizing him more in an offensive way. Putting up 24 points, 7 rebounds, 1 assist, shooting 43% from three on 7 attempts, which is ridiculous. 55% from the field goal range. Me and Nolan, we were laughing and joking the past few weeks about that Knox draft on how, like, me personally, I was a big fan of Porter in high school, his junior senior year, even when he decommitted through Washington and he had all that hate. Like, I understood and I saw the talent there. And even though he had the back problems, man, I really wanted the Knicks to take a chance on him. I understood why they didn't. How'd you guys feel, Jeremy? How you feel about that draft, that Knox draft, and Scott Perry's decision? Pass up and on him, and now we see how he plays. You know how Twitter is, and I know you see it.
Yeah, I really wanted Mikal Bridges. I saw a little bit more than a 3-and-D type, and even if that was all he was going to be, that's a valuable piece to have. Like he's like one of those glue guys that can really keep you together. And the strides he's made have been phenomenal. So Knox really wasn't someone I was super high on as a result. But for Porter Jr., I didn't, like you said, the back injuries really scared me. I know someone who had a friend or a contact in one of the NBA front offices, and they had his review, and they said it was just really concerning for the back. One of the worst they've seen injury-wise in a while. So Denver was in a great position to take him. I don't think other teams would have necessarily made that swing, although I'm surprised the Clippers didn't, because they had 2 picks. And, I know a lot of people might poke fun at the Knicks for taking Knox, but I mean, they had 2 opportunities to take him, and I don't blame them for trading SGA to get Kawhi, but that other
that
pick was
kid,
not great. Yeah,
that kid they took from Boston University, right?
from BC. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that was rough for them. Jerome Robinson.
Yep.
But yeah, that's I just I'm at peace with it. There's nothing that can be done at this point.
How you felt, Nolan?
Yeah, I mean, basically the same. I mean, I was really excited about Knox. You heard that crazy story about how he just dominated in that practice pre-draft, and he looked great that summer league. I got Kevin Knox jersey. I was all excited for him to be the next Jason Tatum, and I don't think the Knicks in Fizdale did much to put him in the best developmental role. I mean, there was that 1 month, I think in December, he won Rookie of the Month or whatever for the Eastern Conference, but he just hasn't been able to put it together enough consistently, even on offense, which is supposed to be his strength, yet alone defense. So drafting Obi, I just don't really see much of a future here for Knox. I mean, it's hard. You hate to write off a kid that young when you see the turnaround a player like Randall has had at this point in his career, but those type of turnarounds are really rare, and he hasn't even shown the ability to produce like Randall had prior to this breakout. So it's hard. It's a hard pill to swallow when you see both the Bridges and Michael Porter Jr., who probably would win Most Improved Player if it wasn't for Randall. But I mean, like Jeremy said, it happened. It is what it is, and kind of just gotta live with it.
Yeah, like circling back to the Knicks on how because I know Frank's qualifying offer is about 8 mil.
It's not. I was actually wrong on that. I just want to point out it's more about 5, because what I forgot was he didn't reach starter criteria. So yeah, but nonetheless, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to correct myself on that.
Yeah, I got that from you. So
yep. Oh no, I know. I figured.
And how you Knox is how much Knox makes next year if they pick up his option?
I'd have to double check, but it should be around 6-ish, somewhere in that ballpark.
Do you believe they picked that up?
They already did. They picked it up
at
before the season started.
Oh, okay, cool. So, how do you feel about his future here with the Knicks, Jeremy?
I don't think it's that long. His saving grace in a lot of ways is the fact that he went to Kentucky. But I think the Knicks don't need to trade him. If they wanted to get some sort of value, I think they should look into it. But considering the fact that 2022 is shaping up to be an important summer for them, I think they would let him go at that point. So you're not really selling high on him, but you don't need to dump him. But if you can find someone that wants him for a 2nd-round pick, like if a team like Houston wants to take a shot at talent and they want Knox, like that's the perfect place to try to get some sort of value from him. Or maybe Sacramento or any of these rebuilding teams, Orlando, they seem to love length and wingspan. So I'd be surprised if Knox weren't shopped, but I just don't think his future is here for long.
One last thing before we let you go. A conversation that me and Nolan has been having a lot recently, and about our big man position, about the centers. Mitch and Noel, they've been injury riddled their whole career. Even though Noel has shown like great moments this season, he's also been banged up a lot this season, and he's been tough. He's been tough, but how comfortable do you feel, Jeremy, about committing like 2+ years to Noel, 2+, signing, giving Mitch his extension now? Like, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, so I wouldn't pay both of them for multiple years. I'd only pick one. Ideally, you're bringing back Noel for another year, but I see the thing is I think Obi's going to see more minutes at the 5 next year. Not a ton, but enough, and that's going to cut into someone's time. So the thing about Mitch as well, I don't know if he's kind of like injury prone, because I go back and forth on this, but last year, for example, I think he only missed about 5 games. This year, obviously, you had the freak hand injury and then the foot injury, but when you see how many players have been hurt around the league this year, I'm trying to figure out, is that a Mitch thing or is that an NBA thing?
Yeah.
And I think this first year, he had one injury that kept him out for a bit, but was pretty good otherwise, and they brought him back slowly. So kind of just putting all this together, because you don't want to invest in someone that you think won't be able to play. I think he can. I think the Knicks believe in him, and I think they're going to try to prioritize him if possible. But someone like Christian Wood, I think, actually hurts Mitch, because as good as Mitch has been defensively, his offense isn't. He's a great finisher, but he won't create much. He only really takes shots at the rim. But I think I want to say Wood's making like 13 or 14. So I don't see a world in which Mitch makes more than that.
Mhm.
And considering how Wood was an unrestricted free agent who was traded in a sign and trade, whereas that probably wouldn't happen with Mitch if he's staying with the Knicks, because he wouldn't be traded. His salary could be lower, and the Knicks could kind of influence that as well. So I'm okay with Noel getting a bigger deal. And I think we even saw last night, as a reminder, just his hands on offense are disgustingly bad. Sometimes
Yeah.
that's not a problem that Mitch has. His hands are fantastic.
Mhm.
So I would much rather keep with Mitch and use him as an asset down the line if need be, versus kind of trading him now and going with Noel. I think the time to trade Mitch was at the deadline, and that passed. And since that did, it's probably better to just keep him now.
Nolan, what's your thoughts on that? We had a lot of conversation about this.
Yeah, I mean, real quick, just like what Jeremy said, I mean, like, I'd love to keep them both, because you see Nerlens has a tendency to get banged up. You see that Mitch had 2 injuries this year. I don't think he's injury prone either, but he is a 7-footer, and any foot injury for a guy that big is scary. You have a high probability of getting that foot re-injured in the future. So if you could get them both on a deal, I think you could, but maybe you'd have to give Nerlens a 1-year deal at maybe like a slightly overvalued price, and then try to get Mitch at a reasonable deal for the years moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so Jeremy, I appreciate you, giving us new bucks, a time, and appreciate it. Talk Knicks, talk about the NBA in general. If you guys check them out, check out the Strickland, check out the film school. Great content if you're diehard Knicks fans like us. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Had a lot of
thanks,
fun.
Jeremy. Appreciate you, man.